Good evening, good morning. Because we've got another chance to talk about Tiendo, and that's a huge subject, of course. They are. Actually, I've got to shut this radio off, and I'll be back in a second. Oh, hi, Cub Doggy, how are you? That's interesting that you're in the chat, but it doesn't say that there's anybody watching, and Jeff, the same thing. Is that two different numbers, I guess? Hi, Jeff. Huh, that's odd. All right, well, anyway, I was going to go shut the radio off. Be back in a second. Well, I bet there's a lot of things going on in your world. Even a lot of things can be even nothing going on. Can be tremendously stressful. In some ways, in human context, of the things that we all do, I think. That gets onto one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit more. Is this idea of uniqueness? We can look at the statistics, and we can see that from a science experiment point of view, there's nothing unique about us. We're just numbers of humans, and if you actually add up the differences, that they're within this little tiny range of what's in our mind as being different, when our bodies are all doing the same exact things. And the mind of the vehicle is also doing the same exact things in relationship to the body. And that's where 99% of our, I'm not saying that, because Tiendo taught that the human doesn't need a soul because it's got its own mind that can actually do everything that we do, pretty much. The only things it can't do, the human mind can't do, that is, well, I don't mean can't. That's not the way to say it, but I believe is reach up to the next level, unless the next level is given that vehicle, that seed, that deposit, that implant, that biological implant, that implant that works with the human body, doesn't destroy it like some of the alien implants might do. I mean, lend towards some kind of destruction, or not, that the body would try to reject it. And anyway, so that, it's so I mean, what Tiendo taught is that what makes us unique is becoming a member of the next level. Then we become unique for the first time. And they explain that in terms of individuality. And they didn't say the term unique, but I think that's the same kind of thing, right? You become an individual, you're becoming the I. And when otherwise, on the human kingdom, according to Tiendo's teachings, we are actually three people in one. With three sets of programming in one. Well, yeah, three different programs. And one is from the genetic history. That's all saved within the cells and then survives even the vehicle's demise, so that it continues to influence the future generations of human vehicles. And so then the new vehicles is a combination then of taking that mind as a basis, that mind and behaviors and ways and physicality, our the diseases, everything that was in that stream, and then it gets redeveloped potentially, not necessarily in all ways, but many of the same ways or similar ways, by the experiences added to it in the current lifetime. That's where the idea of reincarnation really would have, I think, the most secondary understanding of that, as far as I understand from Tiendo, of reincarnation. Because the primary way of understanding reincarnation is the next level, bringing back souls that they planted in a previous time, in the current time. And so and they're going to retake over the human vehicle, because that's what incarnate means. It's carnal, it's from flesh. That's why the carnal desires are the desires of the flesh, in the movies. But in the history, it's God's reality. It's not like that's not correct information, but it's just not moral. It's not a morality issue to where people can be judged by how much they are engaged in their sexuality, I guess is what I'm talking about. And that leads to this other thing I wanted to talk about, which was that common sense, according to Tiendo, I think in the Beyond Human series talked about it, grows by, well, he didn't say it that way, but you have more common sense when you're less sexual. Or if you maybe less doesn't amount to that much. You know what I mean? So and that common sense doesn't necessarily go away, I don't think. If we were away from sexuality for a long time, or very little of it, and or if we didn't have a partner, I think sexuality is different with a partner, on how and how it kind of consumes oneself. And that's my own observation. I don't know if that's really true. So anyway, but so I don't know if it lasts all the time, though. So I shouldn't assume that the common sense that we might have grown to have by being without sexuality for many years. Uh, um, I don't know if they would say that also that ego-driven powers, pursuits and anger, not participating in that might also grow common sense. Not giving in to angry responses. I don't know if that's true because I didn't hear Tino talk about it that way, but they did talk about how those are equivalent kinds of. They weren't trying to rate things, like in the order necessarily. I mean, they did have a big order there in the major offense list, that was deceit and giving into sensuality in any way, and in any way meant anger outbursts, or intense crying, weeping for periods of time. It's not that those things are wrong to experience. It's that if we ask the next level for help, they'll help us learn to not give away all our power or our force that way. In other words, use the frequency that Tiendo said in one of the last tapes that humans are allotted. They didn't say the word allotted, but what they did talk about how it can be used up. Tiendo always had a way of saying something in so few words that makes you, twist your brain around several times to try to comprehend. And the more you get of that, seeing the way they thought, which we can all get from reading all the materials and listening to the tapes, and the more we're going to be growing our common sense, I think. At the same time, another form of growing our common sense. And to where all of a sudden somebody could be saying something and they're saying it's absolutely true and exactly the way they said it, and it's like, holy smokes, you don't have a clue of what you're actually believing in. I know that becomes a judgment, but it's only a judgment of that one little area, and yet at the same time, I can see that they do have a clue about one aspect, some aspect of it. But it's like one little piece of the puzzle. When the puzzle's got 5,000 pieces to it, and maybe I see another two more, or maybe a little more than that, in some departments, not all departments, but some departments perhaps. If I got clues from Tiendo, then I feel more, I feel confident that I feel more confident, not confident as 100%, no. The only thing that we can have confidence in 100% is exactly their words, and we really shouldn't think that the intent. Okay, I feel like I'm getting corrected, but I might be wrong about that. But the intention. See, I'm going to back this up. Getting the intention of the law is the point, not the exact words. But by trying to memorize the exact words can help us get the intention. But what the religion does is it has us focus on the exact words, and then the intention gets lost because the intention comes in from the Luciferian space aliens to discredit it, and so they make it into all about the words, and then those words are shifted to a new language, diluted, which dilutes them, and distorts them. So it's distorting the path to clarity from looking at the information, and changes it into a kind of static, by being chemically anti-life producing. So we become toxic with that. We're poisoned by. That's why this, saying that this was the poison planet was true. And the planet does need healing. And Tiendo talked about how it was, it was no longer useful in the current civilization the way it is. But those said that the planet is in good shape and can and can recover from this, from what the humans have done to it. But that this is an unhealthy environment for life, for all life. Well, except for the life that's the true life of life in the next level, in the evolutionary level above human, evolving beyond, physically evolving and mentally evolving. And mentally evolving is the same thing as evolving our programs. Programs which program takes on the effect of being a astronaut training program. So it's a shift from the way we think of programming from a programmer's perspective of keying in lines of code that tell the computer what to do. It's not that kind of a program. But it works in the same fashion that our minds end up controlling the vehicle and telling the vehicle what to do. And that's how we become an individual for the first time. By doing that, but the only way we're going to do that entirely to become an individual for the first time is if we're doing it according to the instructor's wishes. Because if we find somebody else here, then that instructor doesn't want to work with us. They don't. That's where in the Old Testament said that the God is a jealous God. It's true. That because this is a training program. If the professor sees that the student isn't paying attention to the degree that they know they need to in order to complete the program, then they might as well go do something else. And see, and that got twisted all around to where, just by joining such a movement, you got the benefit of it. Which you do in the sense that, whether it's a mind movement or, a movement where people are actually physically together, we do get the benefit of it because it's like the first step of the next level, gathering souls for their future, their potential future. I shouldn't say their future because it's not an absolute future. I mean, it is absolute if we stay with the program the whole time. And if we leave the program and then come back to it, that's still staying with the program over the course of somebody's life. But at some point, and this can happen naturally, it will probably, if someone is staying with it, it will probably become the only program. Even though, that doesn't mean that, that nobody's thinking about anything else, It's not like, okay, I'm where I must go, But it does enter in that we know we've got the truth. Okay, now, to know we got the truth is to know what T and Do know. And they said that they know what they know, but they also know what they don't know, but they also know where to go to get what they know. Now, this is going to get me off the track, but I needed to say, I need to say that because that is from their minds, I believe, I think verbatim. And so the more we take in their mind, the more we grow to know. Because their mind is the source of that. And they're going to their older members up to the chief of chiefs. The most experienced member, not the oldest in terms of time, but Tino talked about experience as being somebody's age. It's not really the body's age. Well, it becomes the body of the soul body's age. It's all really beyond us, and that's why it's become, taught as philosophy. And of course, that's all fine. We can attach ourselves to so many things in the human kingdom, right? That we make put all our efforts into. And this is another choice. And so I guess I went through that and around Jericho and around the horn a few times. Maybe you didn't even get to the points, because I did also want to finish talking about the Revelation 6:8, because I realized I didn't talk about Pluto hardly at all, except for that, and the Ceres lights. I'm calling them the Ceres light or lights, or elements that give off light. You can say it that way, which is all potentially the same thing. Those might be spacecraft sitting on top of Ceres. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's the case. Or it could be a mining operation. And if anybody is new to this little broadcast, Ceres is the top middle of my screen with Las Vegas compared to it. And now I don't know if the contrast of this picture was enhanced. I don't think it was. Because there's other ones that did have enhancements. Let's see, do I have any others here? Well, some of them do. I know that. To bring out the the picture where that object is to the where is that, about 7 or 8 o'clock position by the sun object. Let's see here. I guess you haven't updated the screen over there yet. But describe it. It's next to the older member that's in the middle. That's got the graying hair. It's to that individual's right side. I think that was brought out. That object below it is seen in a number of different photos. I don't know if I have any more here. Related to comets and maybe even related to ISON. This seemed to be following ISON. And one, which was, somebody put on YouTube and it was like, whoa, what is that? Before that camera was cut out, apparently, or maybe somebody added to it. I wouldn't be surprised to make it even look even crazier. But I have a sense that the next level is making these things happen and come out to be accurate in many cases when they're happening in outer space. Because I don't think they would want to confuse us by doing things on the planet anymore or in the immediate atmosphere anymore, because that's where they've allowed the space aliens to still have dominion over in some ways. That's not really dominion. Have they're away with to degrees that the next level keeps under wraps, so they don't totally destroy the human kingdom before the next level is ready to recycle. Because Tiendo did teach, since I went into that subject, that from my memory, I don't know if I can bring this to something they actually said, and that's documented. Let me think of what it was now. That, well, they did it by example, but they also commented about that example. When we went to Utah early on in 1976, and we were living outdoor in tents, and we were leaving Wyoming. And when we got to Utah, we were there for a while, and we went back to Utah some years later. And also we're living in tents then too. And I was just trying to think about that in a way that I hadn't thought about it before. And they said that then one time after that, Doe was talking about thinking about that he felt like he needed to move the classroom somewhere, and he wasn't sure where to move the classroom. Felt like the instruction was to look into it. And so, because we had a bunch of astrologers on staff, so to speak. Astrology was treated as a game, but that didn't mean that Doug didn't want us to use the game, to play the game, and so he would tell us that when would be he would ask the question, when would be a good time for a move? And he was thinking about that, and if there's any indication of where to move to. And so I think so that was like a horary chart. It's a chart that's based on the hour. That horary, think it's from the Greek, maybe, or maybe Latin. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where that came from initially. Probably Hebrew or Chinese even. Who knows? But anyway, so we would cast a chart, and and I don't know if he ever asked. I think maybe he asked for Lagodi's interpretation one time. I don't know, maybe more than one. I don't know, maybe some of the others that were, but I don't remember my interpretation. I mean, it wasn't made public or anything like for the whole class to examine our data. We didn't give them a report like that. It really wasn't like that kind of thing. It wasn't like a task, to try to come up with it. Actually, if we would have stood a better chance of coming up with the right answer if we waited instead of coming up with an answer from the astrology chart to hear what Doe said. So if we came up with a blank, that was probably a good indication. I think I did come up with a blank, so maybe that was a good indication. I don't know. I'm just being silly, but I'm just so aware of the way the words can sound. Like it can be taken in one way, and at the same time, it's not intended to be in that way. So I'm constantly qualifying myself. And maybe that's an influence doing that with me, with my brain, and I'm allowing it to happen. But doesn't mean that a positive can't come from it. Because I'm not lying about it. I'm not lying about anything. I'm not trying to make something up. I'm trying to get the intention that was put out at the moment that something was given to us. Which at the time we were taught, when we listened, to listen to that. I don't know if they said listen to every word, but they said we can't. No, they didn't say it that way. What they said was that we needed to stop our thoughts that were, comparing to whether you believe that or not, or thinking whether that makes sense or not, or thoughts like that. Not that you might not have those feelings, and maybe even those thoughts, but you were to try to block those out so that you just heard what was being sent. And so yes, it was designed to wash our brains, but we had to do the work. So they weren't inside of our heads blocking those thoughts. If they could do that, then they would be brainwashing us. They would be brainwashing us. If they could take us over and make us abide by what they're saying. And that can be done to some degree by repeating something over and over again. So you've got the people that are the Catholics, especially, have been brainwashed the longest in terms of the current religions in the United States, and the biggest religion in the United States, as far as numbers go, and wealth, and inaccuracy. I say that like with I shouldn't laugh about that. How it doesn't compare with what Jesus taught. I don't know how much of it does. Maybe, a tiny percentage. Maybe none at all. So thoroughly turned opposite from what he taught, which is easy to do. It's really easy to lose what Tian-Do are teaching. But the next level won't necessarily let us lose it once and let us go. So they make it then easier for us to not let it go by helping us, and then we grow more, we see more, we get more common sense, we want to change our behaviors, whatever they are, to improve them, whether that becomes like seeking health consciousness of the physical body, or being more humanitarian to others, being in the best behavior we can have when the older member is not with us. And the older member is still with us in a sense, but that doesn't mean that we can't still also be humanitarian in some way. And I'm not anyone to talk necessarily about being the best humanitarian. I mean, I'm not trying to defend myself or anything or make myself look better or worse, but just as an example, I know the truth, but if I have something, even if I don't have that much, I'll give it away to somebody that, wants it. But I've never been actually without anything. So I don't know how I'd respond if I, only had one piece of bread and somebody else wanted some of it, and maybe I would go, stuff it in my mouth quick. I don't, 'cause we all have, we're all going to have our selfishness, animal instincts. But I would like to believe that I wouldn't do that, because I know that the end of the vehicle isn't the end, and that the more we can demonstrate to the next level that we are taking that unique course. The only path that's truly unique is the one that goes into outer space, beyond the near space, into the distant heavens, the deep space, where only the next level can have anything exist besides their own operations. On headquarters, Tiendo talked about it as headquarters, and they felt like they were from headquarters, and they felt like they were that some could grow to work in headquarters in that same spacecraft. Which, so working for headquarters doesn't mean same spacecraft. It just means wherever headquarters is, I guess. I don't know what that means. I shouldn't try to define it any more than that. That's using my own mind to try to, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that sometimes. Because sometimes I can, put a little, I can go in this, I can bring in another, something that Tiendo said to demonstrate that headquarters can be wherever they want to be. They could have somebody doing tasks like this on a planet. Not like I'm doing, like the task that Tiendo did. But yes, as I and anybody else that believes in Tiendo can choose to do right now, or tomorrow, or 10 years from now. Whenever that might actually click for somebody, and there's no competition with that. And that's the good thing about not being in a commune. You don't have all that competition with one another to deal with. If somebody's running too fast, like Sorority he was accused by some of the students of running too fast, to the trailer where when Tiendo were looking for some individuals to do a task for, like a messenger task, to go get somebody. They would make it into a task. So they would put up one finger if they wanted one person in the window of their trailer when we were living in a tent city, a little tent town. It wasn't city, The population was maybe at that time, somewhere hovering around the 70s and 80s potentially, I guess. But no, it went down pretty fast, down into the 40s, pretty fast. Anyway, but I wondered where a 44 number came from. I don't know. There's a lot of things you can do with numbers, and they're phenomenal a lot of times. And I don't want to get off the track of Pluto, though, but let's see. Oh, there was something that happened with numbers that was really interesting that happened today. I did want to talk about this, and that's the Mark Twain story. I feel like we might have got some new information on kind of the history that might have potentially happened there. That's kind of a type of confirmation of something that I was talking about as being Samuel Clemens, perhaps being that a soul began to use that, not use, but, well, yeah, in a sense, use that vehicle that was grown to be used by a next level member as like the messenger that comes before your face, like happened with John the Baptist in front of Jesus. Or like Aaron and Moses, the speaker that was going to, and how Samuel Clemens was an excellent speaker, and he was against religion, traditional religion, and but he wasn't. He was a deist at the same time, just like the founding fathers, many of them of as they're called, of the United States, and that includes what's his name, the head of the Green Mountain Boys in Vermont. I forgot his name now. Anyway, all that can potentially be related. You know, of souls working, from the next level, preparing the human condition, because that happened in the early 1800s. I think Samuel Clemens was born. I forgot exactly the date he was born, but I know I'm not going back to Pluto, but I guess I'm going to stay on this train now. The Mark Twain train. The Mark Twain train. Wow, I just had this. Don't let me get off the subject if you want to hear more about it, because I do want to get to it. But I've been kind of like trying to figure out how I can talk about the next level to people, to where they're not going to throw me out or just see me as related to Heaven's Gate right away. I'm willing for that to happen eventually. I don't have a problem with that, and that'll happen sooner rather than later, because my face is so becoming put on People magazine documentary and things. You just that's pretty mainstream as you get. So. But I was thinking Mark Twain train, maybe like writing little songs about Mark Twain, with like riding the tail of the comet to heaven, like he wrote in the movie that he produced called Captain Stormfield's Trip to Heaven. I didn't realize that you could be in the chat room and not be watching. No, you could be watching and not be in the chat room. I don't think I've ever gone on a live stream on YouTube. But anyway, so Mark Twain. So let me actually, for this, I got to pull up something here. I got to do this right. Yeah, I got this from Coast to Coast. And, okay, good. So I'm going to read it for somebody that doesn't. This is a report from Coast to Coast from 9/1/2019. So just the other day, day before yesterday. And it's in the first half, historian and expert in biblical prophecy, Jonathan Cahn unveiled his latest work on what he calls the Jubilean Mysteries, 7 doors or oracles that foretell the future and function as a blueprint for the end times. A Jubilean mystery, he said, is a 50-year cycle in which what was lost returns. And each door matches with a particular time when these mysteries come about. The coming of the stranger, in quotes, as prophesied by Moses, was actually the author, Mark Twain, who visited Jerusalem in 1869. And this was around the time the Jewish people started to return to Israel, Kahn remarked. Then it goes on to say, in the next Jubilee year, 1917, the British government issued a decree that Israel should be returned to the Jewish people. The visionary of the Israeli state was Theodor Herzl, who had a dream as a child of the Messiah telling him he wouldn't come back to our world until the Jewish people returned to Israel. Door number 6 of the oracle represents the near future, Kahn stated, when the prophet Daniel spoke of a one-world civilization that comes against Israel, and also against believers. And we are watching that unfold now. During end times, many turn away from faith, he noted, but those that remain will be like the apostles and anointed in a revolutionary way. The 7th door, Kahn continued, refers to an ultimate jubilee, a time in the farther future cited in the Bible that marks a return to paradise. Well, there's a lot of things in this I have a lot to say about it. I'm not saying that everything he's saying here, I'm not saying that everything he's saying here does not have an application to the truth that I understand from my experience with Tiendo and my study of the scriptures. But a few key points to me are very interesting. And like Blueprint for the End Times is something that I've been calling the Book of Revelations for years. That's like a blueprint. And I didn't get that from Tiendo's mind in person that I ever heard about or in writing. So so I'm not saying that he picked it up from me, but we picked it up at the same time. That's a considerable possibility, and which doesn't mean anything. It just means that the next level had provided that, and because of the train of mind that individuals are on, they end up picking up more on the things that are of that subject matter, of that way of thinking. That's what the spiritual world provides us all. That's what was set up by the next level so that we had the capacity to become whatever we wanted to become in our minds. And that would also translate into our physicality. What we would do with whatever we wanted to become. Which I want to put that in there for whatever it might be worth, okay, so that's the blueprint part. Then it said a Jubilee and mystery. Okay, yes, the whole thing was a mystery. According to the Book of Revelations, is telling John in some of the writings to not write about this, to keep it a mystery. And then the mystery Babylon in Revelation 17. When we see 2 or 3 examples or more of the same kind of thinking, to me, that's a bigger indication that John got that part of it fairly accurate, or accurate enough, so that it could be of use to us. Because this is a Jewish individual who was born, I think, Israeli. I don't know if he was in Israel or not, but became a theologian, I guess, in Israel or for Israel in some way, and maybe just by writing books, but the same thing. and then became I guess a Christian. I think I might be wrong about that, but so when he talks, he's talking with more objectivity about the Old Testament, and so I like to listen to him, and he had a lot of things to say about the 9/11 event with that little church that was right there at the bottom of the buildings that collapsed. That was not hardly, it was burnt, it had a little bit of scorching on it, I think, and maybe one little part, maybe it was a little damaged, I don't think, but otherwise it was like completely preserved, where the buildings around the two that fell all had, well, I shouldn't say all, but I know Building 7, another couple buildings definitely had damage in that same area. And I got the bit when I learned that about when he said, I didn't think much of it, but then when I thought about it again, when I saw this article, I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if the next level could have even steered those buildings down like that, so that they wouldn't do too much damage, or they wouldn't damage that little church because they might want to use it in prophecy. Because there's a little sycamore tree in front of that church also. And he referred to a verse in Isaiah that talked about that sycamore tree, kind of in the same breath, where he was talking about something that could have sounded like the 9/11 event, which I forgot what it was now, but I think I might have put it in my book because it was so interesting, the combinations he made. And the Jubilean thing, that's another, I've been trying to figure out the timeline for so long. I can't tell you, trying to find the commonness, if there are any patterns. And I spent weeks of worth of full days, spread out over the 15 years I was writing the book on trying to figure out timelines. And I had history timelines and, like the world wars and all the events, back into the, I didn't go back beyond like the 1700s too much, really. But, in theory, back to the beginning of the millennium, the millennium an age according to Tiendo was 2,000 years. But a millennium, I guess, would be 1,000 years, right? So I said it right, I think, unless I got that mixed up somehow. But if I did, you can correct me. I don't mind that. Since I just got on a stopping spot here and I was attracted to the chat room, I see Jeff says, I work with several Jehovah's Witnesses. Did Tiendo have an opinion on them? I don't really know. I can't really bring anything up in my head because they didn't talk about the 144,000 that I can ever really remember. No, I can't. If I think of something in the future, I'll certainly try to remember to make a note of it and bring it up. But I can't remember right now. But however, they would have been the same as all the sects, SECTS, of the religions, being a sect of the religions that were off track, that had become distorted and diluted, and were largely, influenced by Paul's materials, according to T, which I saw in one of the last tapes that we listened to, which I didn't remember at the time when she said it because we weren't studying the Bible. So I didn't have it in front of me all the time, and We didn't ever have it in front of us except that one time when Doe told us that he was the Revelation 12 woman. Anyway, but and I've recounted the details of that in the past live streams if anybody wants to see more of that. But so I can say that. They did say, it does bring up something else though. You're saying that I did want to bring up. And I've got to find the document on this. But maybe I'll save that for another time. Let's see here. Not save it. I'm not trying to save things, but I just don't want to spend all my time. Well, it doesn't matter time. I can do this. You can bear with me a little bit. Let's see. I want to look for the book UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. Oh, there it is. I've got it here. Oh, dynamite. I can just copy this over to my other screen and then you can have it too. That wasn't too hard. See, I was thinking negative there. I shouldn't be trying to save time for something else. I can always come back to those things. They're all like threads anyway, right? Okay, in this document here that I posted, which I've got there an address to my blog for it, although I might have changed it and then without changing the blog entry. But anyway, I probably did. Let me see if I can search on the Revelation. I hope this one has it. Yeah, it does. Now, I'm just going to preface this with, this is the book that, I should have scrolled down to that, shouldn't I? So that you would be kind of on record, this document. I'll do that. It's number, no, I got it in my WordPress thing. I don't need to do that. So, getting off the track. All right, but it has to do with, and so there's the context of it anyway. Number 5, I'm going to read it. We settled for a little while in Portland. We stayed in now this is actually quoting Tien Doe. In the interview that was, I think this one was from Hayden Hughes, who is the head of UFO group organization on the research of UFOs in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And at the time in 1974, when Tien Doe, going by the names Bonnie and Herf, the names of their vehicles, were searching for, well, it was after they recognized that they had come from the next level the evolutionary level above human, and that they were here to do a task of updating the Bible and fulfilling prophecy, and that the prophecy was, those are the first three things they got in 1973, early on in February or January and February of 1973 in Texas. They got that piece of information or chunk of information. And then they went out looking for what prophecies they were supposed to fulfill. So they started studying everything they could, the theosophy materials and the Buddhist materials and of course the Hindu is part of the theosophy materials for the most part, and all the alternative thinking for the Christian, early Christian materials, and when they got to Revelation chapter 11 in the Bible, that's when they recognized, okay, this is talking about us, the task that we're doing. But they didn't ever really use that. And there's a little funny story with that, as they were traveling around telling people then after that they were the two witnesses. They weren't just shouted out or anything, but they were trying to meet with different religious leaders and different New Age groups and meditation groups and things like that, where like Billy Graham, they tried to meet with him, but they weren't allowed to, and he wouldn't meet with them. And Oral Roberts, I think they tried to meet with, and I don't think they allowed to meet with him either. I don't know. Anyway, but. So they got to Oklahoma City and they met with, they went to the Summit Lighthouse, which was what the Cult Awareness Network would have called a cult, led by Elizabeth Clare Prophet and her husband. I'm not sure I forgot her husband's name. I'm not sure if his name came first when you said them together or not. I don't know, but she broke off from him, or I don't know what happened to him actually, and she formed a group that went up to Montana and were preparing for the end times by storing food and weapons and taking over communities up there and forming their own community, which they did, and they had a lot of problems with doing it, but I think they ended up being successful because they bought a lot of land. So anyway, but I don't know too much about them. But anyway, so they went to the Summit Lighthouse where that started in Oklahoma City, and I think it was Oklahoma City. I'm not positive about that as well, but. And they went to, and it was like it was like an office, and they went in, and there was a receptionist there, and the person, they said they wanted to talk to their teachers, I think is what they said, and that and the person said, you can double check me on that too, on the story actually, because it's in the 88 update in the Heaven's Gate book. And that 88 update is also published on my blog. It's 88 update without a space in between. 88 UPDATE. 88 update. Anyway, and or it's on the Heaven's Gate website. I don't know if you can search the whole website for it, or in the T&O book that is freely downloaded. Anyway, I'm getting off the track, but oh yeah, okay, Summit Lighthouse, and so the person said, the receptionist said to them, "Oh, that's not possible because my teachers are the two witnesses." And T&O like. So after that, they didn't tell anybody that they were the two witnesses. They didn't even say it at the meeting that they gave that I was at. I don't think. They said that two individuals have come to perform the same task, to carry on and bring updates to what Jesus taught. They did say that, and that they were from the same family as Jesus. They didn't say they were Jesus returning. But T ended up saying that which he also evidenced in the book. That was the first book they wrote in 1973. That only was 2 chapters, and it was never published. And it was called "I Can't Believe That, But You Must." And I put that in the packets that I send out. Anyway, but in that she infers that Doe was the return of Jesus, just not in a carpenter's body. And will you accept him? And T ended up telling us that Doe was actually the same individual who did the task of Adam and Enoch and Moses and Elijah. And then Jesus as the 5th closeness. And then the 6th closeness was T and Doe as the 2 witnesses. And the 7th closeness is the now. It's happening. It started with when they left, with Doe coming public as being the return of the same soul that did the task as in the vehicle of Jesus. But then the 7th time he comes back. The 7th closeness, according to T and Doe, is when that individual comes back. Doe comes back with his next level vehicle. And that's what's in this document that I haven't gotten to yet. I know I probably went down a bunch of different pathways there, and so I probably left some things hanging. But I think I did make a complete thought. Hope. So they left. So I'm going to read more from this. Did I start? Yeah, I read that first thing. So then soy is me. That's my initials for Soyody, SWYODY. On our schedules and things, that's when we used the word soy. Otherwise, I was never called soy. Just to be accurate about that. And then so my comment to them in Portland, commenting on the time frame. So they left Portland around mid-July of 1973 and were in Gold Beach, Oregon, where they had their biggest degree of awakening, recognizing their task was depicted in chapter 11 of the book of Revelation. I guess I said all this already. Okay, I said all this already, so I'm not going to, well, I am going to, no, I said it, so if somebody can't see, they're not going to be missing out on anything in this regard. Yeah, Gold Beach, they were painting rocks and selling them to tourists to get enough money to, I think, have some cream with blueberries or blackberries. I think they were living on blackberries and might have been honey. I don't know. No, it wouldn't have been honey, I don't think. I don't remember now what it was, but he said it in one of the previous tapes. I did probably take notes, but I don't have a good filing system. I haven't digitized them. I should try to hire somebody to type. I don't really have the money to do that. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Just thinking out loud here. Oh, it said that right here. They're picking wild blackberries to eat. Duh, I didn't read the rest of the sentence. I thought there was something that went with the blackberries, though. I don't know, maybe I added that in. Anyway, they traveled cross country and into Canada again and met with Hayden Hughes in 1974 and then had their first meeting in North Hollywood. California, where they attracted students. That was early April 1975. Okay, I didn't really want to go into all this, so but I guess it's a little bit of a context. Well, not really. Yeah, I'm going to read the next thing they said in response to a question on page 96 of the book, UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. We are hesitant about telling the world that we are related to the passage in Revelation. Oh, wow, I should have... No, I should read the question. I'm sorry. That would be the context. When you say that you have to be assassinated, put to death in a major American city, are you patterning yourselves on the experience and the death of Christ? Then the two answer this. That's the way it's labeled, as the two. No, it's the only proof. I believe this is the Brad Steiger interview with them, which was in January of 1976. So the two say, no, it's the only proof we can show that we are who we are. It is characteristic of the members of the next kingdom to be able to heal their bodies in 3.5 days. The fact that we might have to do that demonstration did not come to our minds after reading Jesus' life. Demonstration was referring to them being assassinated and then resurrecting. He didn't say that in the question. No, it had to do with that, but that's what the two witnesses are said to do. They're killed in the streets. And I've gone through a complete interpretation of that. And if there's anybody new to this broadcast that hadn't heard it, you might want to look at the word apokataino in the Greek, APOKTEINO, and you'll see that kataino by itself appears to be the part of it that has to do with dying or slaying or destroying in any way. And that the word APO or apo might be the part that makes it destroying in any way killing. So it might be, I hadn't thought of that before. I just realized that. And but it can also mean what I thought it meant, the APO as part of a conjunction used with kataino, which it says in Strong's Concordance, as in the Greek dictionary part of it, that it has to do with separation and exit or going away from. Oh, that's interesting. Away also is one of the ways that it's used. Something. So the destroying could be seen then as destroying by death. And that's what they did to their human vehicles, of course. They destroyed their human vehicles on purpose. And that's, so they did that. So, exactly the way it's said there. See, the part that they get wrong is when they make it into kill, they're saying that the beast rises up to slay them. And that's true that the human kingdom killed their vehicles, because that was part of the what they needed to portray as the giving of all. It includes the vehicle. We have to give up all our human life to actually graduate into the next level entirely. Now, it doesn't mean that it happens through suicide. No, that's not the way it happens, especially now. Of course, that doesn't happen now because we need our vehicles. What Tindo also said is when you're called to the next level, when you know you've been called to go back, and then you don't go back, that's suicide. So for them, they were called by the Hale-Bopp comet as the timing. not the not the not the leaving of the no for the rendezvous with the bus. And the bus wasn't necessarily the companion object, but it might have been. I think it was. But it doesn't really matter whether it was or not. They knew there would be a bus to pick up their soul bodies. And because those soul bodies had grown a lot from this experience here on the planet. And so getting way down the road here, but talking about the resurrection, so they did resurrect. They rose up to the next level. Even can match that thing that Paul said, even though Paul said a lot of things that were totally the opposite, they're totally wrong and misinformation. He did say that the dead in Christ would rise first. Now that happens in both ways. Okay, so coming, the dead in Christ, the ones that died for Jesus, Christing before, the Christing being a process of transformation into a metamorphosis into a new creature, which is what the soul body is inside the cocoon of the human flesh, or the chrysalis is taking place. The christening or the Christing is taking place there. The anointing, because the Christing is also the anointing, because the anointing is the being given the task to do for the next level, which taking over our vehicles is a task to do for the next level for our souls. If we're doing it for the next level, if we're doing it for a teacher on a mountain somewhere, then we're doing it for that person. And whatever strain of minds or even souls were attached to that person originally, which the only souls that would be would be the lower forces souls, the Luciferian space aliens. The ones that dropped away and went against the next level, that was Lucifer and named Lucifer and others that all had names. I don't know. I was just thinking about something, but I don't want to go there right now. Any more than that. There's another. Which Tiendo said that the space aliens are souls. Actually, I heard only Do say that. But they're souls that can do more than spirits can. Discarnates, dead humans or dead animals. Or even, I don't know if there's a spirit associated with the plant kingdom, but it's a frequency definitely associated with the plant kingdom. I don't know, how much those frequencies don't just blend in with everything or not. I don't know how that happens. Or maybe they recycle themselves somehow. So maybe I went down enough roads over there. I'm gonna still get to this thing that talks about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and not specifically about them, but about part of the Book of Revelations that talks about the 144,000. So I'm not saying that the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't pick up on that being a significant number, even though it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an exact digital number. It now represents all the souls that came back with the next level from having previous experiences with the next level member, and the ones that even dropped out of those experiences and sided with the opposite side all those souls are being brought. Anyone that had significant relationship with the next level in the past was going to be brought back during the civilization, but it could also mean previous civilizations. Anyway, so and that was to the new land. That, going back to that thing that Jonathan Kahn was talking about. And the seventh closeness would be then the seventh door. The seventh seal being opened, because the seven seals have to do with the seals are on the book. The book is the next level body of information. So every time they put out more of their information, they were the two witnesses were establishing the first seal by telling the truth and the evidence and talking about it in non-religious terminology, because it wasn't illusionary anymore. We had the technology enough and the growth of souls and spirits enough to where our vehicles are a match for being able to understand more of the reality of the next level. In the starting in the 1970s. I'm not saying that the vehicles were all born that were having that experience as, probably from the late 40s or even before that, potentially. I don't know when they were all born from. They could have been born any time from 1898 on, maybe, who knows. And so that they're influencing, they're having hands-on experience influencing the parents of the vehicles that ended up getting deposited with next level containers, pockets, pillowcases that hold like balloons inside a vase, like putting another balloon inside of a vase. So that it's got two balloons in it, one for the human mind and one for the next level mind. And that the object is to get rid of all the human mind and to just increase, and then that will increase the next level mind. And you'll never get rid of all the human mind, because we still need to have some of that human mind so that we know how to walk and talk and do all that. We have all that. Those programs are all still in place to where we can, operate them. They can be operated upon by whatever's going through that has control of the vehicle. And the Luciferian space aliens, I know I'm going way off what I was talking about, but I think this is good information. And it didn't come from me. So the Luciferian space aliens, according to Doe, do transmit to humans the thoughts they want us to. They want us to propagate. They want lots of human bodies, because that'll help keep us human. Because we become beholden to them, the bodies that we produce. And we need to be, actually, when we have them, from the human perspective, they need to be responsible for the human bodies they bring into the world. They facilitate the development of, because they don't create them. And then give them away to the, not give them away, but don't keep possession of them once they're grown up and they're able to live independently of us. Anyway, so parents, I'm thinking about that relationship, because it's the same thing what the next level does. So we become dependent on them, and then they set us free to be individuals. Because Tino said that when you're in the next level, they're not watching over you all the time, and you've got to report things where you had questions and where things came up where you made choices that you were hoping were the choices your older member would make, but you didn't know for sure were, but that your crew at the time was responsible in a responsible position, so they didn't always have access to their older member. It's not like the older member's there all the time, and T and Doe demonstrated that by doing this task, and to where the older members were not. Sometimes they didn't pick up the phone when they rang them, and they got a hoot out of the E.T. movie when it was talking about phoning home because they felt like that's what it was like, but they didn't always pick up. And so they would restructure the question. Think about how to say it in a different way. Or they would put it on hold sometimes, and a lot of times, and it would be like on the back burner, and then they would then focus on something else, and that they felt like they had priorities to focus on, and that was in the development of the classroom, of course, which they put their total focus on, which included the relationship that T had with Doe, and that Doe had with T. T being his older member. He said that T was his older member. If somebody is here for the first time and hasn't learned about that. And the way that happened, actually, to where Doe knew that T was his older member, was over time, gradually in 1973, where at first he wondered if T was, interested in him in a human way. I think he says this in the 88 update, and in different ways. I should probably remember, but I got the intention of it, I think. But he quickly knew that wasn't the case, and so he never did have any kind of he even said in the Beyond Human tapes that he wouldn't have dirtied his mouth on his older member's vehicle's mouth. And when he said that, I was like, "Whoa, holy smokes!" I know what he feels about T. I mean, the best I can. I understand, because I feel somewhat. I feel a little like that to Doe. I mean, I know I have those emotions about Doe, and so I can imagine what his emotions are towards T. And so from to say that, but it was strictly a hygienic thing, but it was also like a little shocker to us, because they also taught that the vehicles became good. They became they were set aside. I mean, the spirit with those vehicles that was developing in those vehicles was agreeing to cooperate, to let the soul take it over. And that takes a big spirit, it takes a developed spirit, or maybe not. Maybe, I don't know what it takes exactly in the quality of the spirit for that to happen. They did say that, so I take that back. It doesn't require necessarily a big spirit or an advanced spirit. I mean, all the vehicles, the spirits are, because they're not all the same throughout the whole tree of spiritual life of the earth, of the earth's human kingdom. So that's why I was kind of saying it that way. But gosh, did I go down a lot of different roads that time. Maybe I didn't even finish that last one. Yeah, I want to go back to something before that, but I'm sorry. If you want to put a keyword in there in the chat room, I'd appreciate being reminded of it. But otherwise, I'm going to go back to Mark Twain, I think. No, I didn't finish the Revelation yet. That's important. In my mind, it's important. Okay, here it is. Okay, this is a document that Tiendo wrote. The title of this document is I should have been scrolling this. This book is definitely worth having. Even Tiendo weren't pleased with it, but we had it in the classroom. We had boxes of them. We hold around with us from house to house, craft to craft. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm going back and forth here and driving this broadcast was going to be driven crazy here. Here it is. Starting from page 159, it's a document that Tiendo wrote. So apparently, Tiendo didn't tell us that this was not true. And I don't think they would have had it for us to read where something they said was wrong. Why would they do that, right? They don't want to promote misinformation. So that's why I can trust that this is true. And Frank would know about this book, and Odie, and so would Pip Odie, and so would Mercody and Seraph Odie, I think. Yeah, they definitely would. The Heaven's Gate webmasters, Heaven's Gate webpage webmasters. Anyway, so I'm going to read it. It's going to take me a few minutes. Are you all okay with reading it, or because it's going to get to talking about something that I've been wanting to get to for a while. Before I do, I guess I'll go to the chat room and see if there's anything else on your minds. It only says one in the chat room, I think. Hey, DJ, huh? Oh, yeah, you're talking to DJ. Oh, yeah, he's the DJ. DJ Taconic. No, DJ Teutonic. Yeah, Teutonic, right? Teutonic Plate. That's a pretty cool name. Okay, well, I guess I'll read it. Duh. What is happening in the heavens at this time? Well, let me first say, since somebody might come into it now, this document was written in 1973 or 4 by 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. and published in the book UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. What is happening in the heavens at this time? If you could project your mind out into the heavens and look at the positions of planets and other solar bodies in this immediate solar system, then extend your observations even more distantly, you might not be able to see the actual physical manifestation of energy. But if you were sensitive, you would be aware that there is, at this time, an intense energy source focusing on this planet. How severely this energy is affecting other planets in the solar system, we don't know, and it is not important to us. This energy focus might be more clearly understood if you picture a searchlight that is circling in the far distant heavens without interference from other bodies in the heavens, clearly shining on this planet as it did approximately 2,000 years ago in its last orbiting. Another way to picture this same energy field would be to imagine a very distant emission of energy that has been obstructed from this planet by the positional interference of other solar bodies. At this time, it is as if an opening or a shaft has been made by the present position of the heavens, permitting a strong intensity of the energy field to focus directly upon Earth, as it did approximately 2,000 years ago. It really does not make any difference that the actual cause or reason behind the energy focus is. What the actual cause or reason behind the energy focus is, but to be aware of its presence and thereby understand why the life forms on this planet are responding the way they are is significant and will be helpful in understanding and controlling one's own individual response. I want to read that line again better. It really does not make any difference what the actual cause or reason behind the energy focus is, but to be aware of its presence and thereby understand why the life forms on this planet are responding the way they are is significant and will be helpful in understanding and controlling one's own individual response. Everything in the heavens, including this planet, is in a constant process of change and response to change. I'm going to start that line again because I was correcting the spelling on one of the words. I don't want to, I typed this in, copied it from the book, so I'm going to start that line again. Everything in the heavens, including this planet, is in a constant process of change and response to change, and that response determines growth or decay. This little planet, called Earth, is a garden from which individuals whom man would label gods may be born. Gods because capital gods, as opposed to the little letter gods before. I'm just adding in my little comment here. And gods is in quotes the second time, which I'll start that sentence with. Gods because they are members of a kingdom level above human, the kingdom of God. When this planet came together and was formed by members, or a particular member in that level above human, whose responsibility or chosen endeavor was the creation of a new garden, it became the place where germination could begin and life forms could multiply. If the life form survived all the intermediate lesson steps of growth, they could work their way up to the human level. Now, at this particular time, when an intense energy source is striking the planet, graduation from the human level into the level above human, or the kingdom of God, is made available. The Earth Garden has had life forms survive in growth motion into the human kingdom in previous civilizations. However, at this time when the availability was offered, those previous human civilizations were not able to make it through the transition from human to the level above human. A lot of growth in levels beneath human seems to be more automatic in upward motion, for the strength of will that pushes the life form up a notch is, for the most part, not consciously aware of what it is doing when it graduates upwardly. At the human level, school children in their early grades are not consciously aware that they have grown by their choice. However, at the growth level where humans become a prospect for the next level, the level above human, he must be completely aware of what he is doing or cannot complete the transitional experience. It might be helpful to consider how graduation from one level to the next is deserved or reached. A dog who has become tired or disenchanted with the so-called normal activities of the dog would I'm going to start that sentence again. It might be helpful to consider how graduation from one level to the next level It might be helpful to consider how graduation from one level to the next is deserved or reached. A dog who has become tired or disenchanted with the so-called normal activities of the dog world and finds his only pleasure in pleasing his master deserves to move out of the dog kingdom and into the beginning stage of the level that he chooses to serve. Some dogs might accept the training to avoid punishment. Their motivation would not make them deserving of graduating into the kindergarten of the human level. But the dog who desires only the attention, approval, and affection of the human, whose motivation is genuinely that of seeking to be associated with the next level, or human world, deserves to move into that higher level when graduation time arrives. The energy focus that is now on planet Earth is the energy needed for the graduation experience. The human who desires only to please and serve the level above his kingdom can at this time, with the help of members of his school, with the help of members of the level above human, actually is what it says there. I got to start over again, darn it. The energy focus that is now on planet Earth is the energy needed for the graduation experience. The human who desires only to please, to serve the level above his kingdom, can at this time, with the help of members of the level above human, receive his examination, roll call, depart from his school, Earth, go out in the world, into the literal heavens, among other members of the kingdom of God, and begin his apprenticeship and chosen activities. Out in the world was put in quotes because it's the new world and the living heavens that this individual is going to. The man who teaches a dog must hold frequent training sessions or the dog will quickly forget his training. Though he may continue to seek a close, affectionate relationship with the man. A human college student must have an increasingly distant relationship with his professor and come into his own knowledge if he hopes to one day be in a professional capacity. A candidate for the level above human must have an even more distant physical relationship with his teachers, or the members of the kingdom above human. For the requirement of his graduation includes a mental teaching program and a willingness to complete that program before gaining physical contact with the teacher level. Because of this extremely infrequent physical contact, most religions have adopted the belief that members of that next level do not have physical bodies. The human professor does not seek out his students to impose his teachings. Rather, they pay for instruction and choose to go to his classroom because society imposes the idea upon humans that they must find themselves in classrooms. A prospective candidate for the next level has to do all of his seeking from the minds of his teachers in the next level through the strength of his own volition, according to the intensity of his thirst for knowledge above human. Now, at the same time that this intense energy focus or shines on this planet, members of the level above human come in at close range to examine the garden, most especially the human kingdom, and assist in the graduation. In preparation for the rare graduation period, a member or members of the next level might have chosen to leave their physical bodies, incarnate in the offspring of women, lose one man, lose the conscious minds they had attained, and live a seemingly normal human existence for a number of years through close associates might have realized there was something different about them. Though close associates might have realized there was something different about them. At the point in time when the energy focus became very intense, these people went through a period of mental transition. They became aware of the fact that they had come from another level and that they had spent a part of a human life in order to be at closer range with prospective graduates. The teachers can now tell and show how the changeover from a human into a member of the next level is accomplished. They may even demonstrate to non-believers that upon completion of the changeover, they may have become creatures capable of repairing a so-called dead body in 3.5 days. It was earlier stated that civilizations have existed on this planet that were unable to rise above the highest human condition. The present civilization, which began approximately 6,000 years ago, has been the recipient of special help from the level above human. Members of the level above human chose to incarnate several times into this civilization in the human school. This was not as bolded type used. This is not in order to upgrade genealogy or physical bodies, but to associate with the souls who are products of this garden, so that they might have someone with a higher consciousness in their midst to serve as an example. The individual who is called Adam came to earth from the heavens, the kingdom above human, in his total form, physical body and mind. He was so overcome by the discarnates, invisible life forms, from the previous civilizations, that he was not able to withstand the aggression of their influences. Adam thereby temporarily lost his heavenly consciousness, the capacity of the mind of an individual in the next level, and found himself in the decaying vibration of the human level. This led to his death. It was not until his incarnation in the individual named Enoch, who was the second major help, that he was able to rise above human level vibrations and thereby resume his mental capacity as a member of our Father's kingdom. This awareness permitted him to serve in the function of assisting in the bringing up of early grade humans, who were products of the Earth's garden. After Adam Enoch had left adequate upgrading teachings, he was in sufficient mental communication with members of the level above human to complete his total conversion back into a rightful member of that level and depart from the human world and the Earth's surface without experiencing death. He took his whole mind and body with him. This is to say that Adam was brought to Earth's surface from the kingdom above human, the kingdom of God, to begin a new civilization. He yielded to the temptations of the human level sensuality, and in so doing, he decreased his knowledge, the expanse of his mind to that of a human level creature. In a sense, Adam lost what he had previously gained, and he did not begin to recover it to any significant degree until his incarnation as Enoch. As Enoch, Adam completed his changeover, physically and mentally, and left the Earth's surface to re-enter the kingdom above human. After a season of growth, a third help mission was sent to this particular civilization. But this time, in order to understand and to relate to the level of growth of the civilization, a member of our Father's kingdom left his heavenly body in the spacecraft that brought him to the Earth's surface and entered the newborn body named Moses. Upon entering the baby's body, the mind that had been in the level above human had to be as restricted as the child's vehicle. In a sense, that mind had to go to sleep and reawaken as soon as the body of Moses had encountered enough experiences of growth and suffering to realize he had extraordinary work to do. It was his accepted responsibility before coming down to Earth to upgrade the civilization several grades beyond what had been offered by Enoch. Using an analogy of 12 grades in school related to 12 steps of human growth in a civilization, it was Moses' chosen mission to set rules of order, which, if adhered to, could elevate man's growth to 5th or 6th grade students in the human school. Moses, like Enoch, later in life changed from his human condition into a body and mind that could return to the level above human. When his work had been completed, he did not leave a human body behind, but took his changed over body with him. The fourth significant help for this civilization came at the next major spring, in quotes, when a member of our Father's kingdom, or the fourth mission of the same member, occurred. An individual incarnate as Elijah came to Earth's surface and served in a capacity similar to Moses. The information that he brought was again designed to upgrade or to assist the civilization, particularly those who had grown to the point that as individuals they were seeking to begin to rise above what they had gotten into. Elijah's information was structured for those who were moving away from their densest or broadest accumulation of human attachments, reaching for grades 7 or 8. Of equal importance, Elijah's information sought to prepare the growing members of the civilization for the next help that would come in Jesus, which would actually give the information for graduation from the 12th grade, human level, altogether, and show humans how to enter the kingdom of God. Never has any heavenly information been accepted by the masses as a whole. Rather, it is accepted by the few who seek to change out their last station of growth. Masses or groups of people do not grow or move up automatically. Growth is done individually, according to the degree of thirst for upward motion in the individual. The next major help, or fifth upgrading mission, from the kingdom above human, brought the civilization applicable information about how an individual product of this garden might change sufficiently to leave the human kingdom literally and take his total being, mind and body, with him into the kingdom above human. This is to say that the individual who came to fulfill this fifth mission took the incarnation labeled Jesus. In the same manner, the individual of the third mission incarnated as Moses, and the fourth as Elijah. Jesus' mission was to tell and to show how human products of this garden, who had risen to the point where they were seeking the kingdom of heaven, could reach it. But even though their comprehension of the changeover task was sufficient for them to begin to receive the information, the capacity for applying the formula of overcoming or changeover was lacking. This is not to say that anything was lost by those who were applying Jesus' teachings, for those same souls are here again, now at this sixth help season, in order to complete what they had started with his assistance. The one who was named Jesus not only had, after his awakening, the responsibility of telling and showing how the literal changeover from a human being into a heavenly being is accomplished, he also had the added task of demonstrating that one who had changed over can reheal his body in 3.5 days if he is destroyed. Since the masses of people in this civilization did not desire upward growth sufficiently to reach for information Jesus brought, they found themselves in a growth condition that was blind to his truth. They had not the capacity to accept him. Therefore, they rejected him to the point of desiring his death. Since the slow growers chose to kill him, Jesus' mission included a proof demonstration for the unbelievers. This did not mean that any others who might complete their changeover would need to be, or even ask to be, the instruments of such a demonstration. None of this is to say that efforts towards growth and upward reaching endeavors that took the form of religious movements were not the best for which men had the capacity at their station of growth. Ultimately, the information for which all souls who seek to grow upward are looking is information on how to graduate into the next kingdom. It makes no difference which path you take up the mountain, what pursuits of knowledge, scientific or religious, you choose. All can lead to the top if your thirst remains unquenchable and you are dissatisfied with the level you have obtained. However, when you have reached the top of the mountain, you must discard all the discoloration and terminology accumulated in your upward climb and come into an unvarnished, unromantic understanding of the requirements of liftoff, in quotes. Therefore, there is only one way to reach the kindergarten in the kingdom of heaven. It was knowable at this time of Jesus' mission, if one could understand what he taught, not what others said he taught, and is knowable at this time through the information that is our responsibility to clarify. The sixth major help period for Earth's human garden is now. The truth brought by us is 100% the same truth brought in the mission of Jesus. Our responsibility is to reunite your minds with the proper interpretation of what he had to say, if you seek it, and to help you understand that only in the same way that he changed over in order to re-enter the kingdom above human can you become a member of that level. When Jesus said that everything that I am, you can become and more, much more, he meant it. It is true. When Jesus, once again, we are in a brief season when the light, in quotes, or knowledge or energy focus, in quotes, is on this planet. It is brief and intense. Many who have not chosen upward motion may respond adversely and even destroy themselves. Some, we hope, will realize that now is a brief period for your preparation to leave the human kingdom. The seventh closest will not be a teaching one, but a gathering of the harvest of those who have overcome this world. If the forces of those who have chosen to be slow growers again choose to reject this truth and its bearers, then the two of us will again demonstrate that changed over individuals can repair their so-called dead bodies in 3.5 days. If that must happen, it will be soon, and at the time that we have completed our testimony. As soon as our clarification is complete and it has adequately reached our eyes, as soon as our clarification is complete and it has adequately reached the eyes, ears, and minds of those who have become ready for it, we can re-enter the kingdom of above human and be a part of the membership of that level again. Many could choose to overcome this world and even be a part of its becoming a heavenly body instead of a garden. The option is there. The intense energy focus that is on the planet will cause them to make their choice. They can accept this truth or do it, or reject it. The seventh closeness, which is immediately upon us, in the sense that those who are in the middle of their normal lifespan will easily live to see its completion, will include such events as what the Christian church refers to as the second coming, the rapture, in quotes, and the completion of the final prophecies in John's book of Revelation. The one who is Jesus will come in at close range as soon as those who have chosen to change over do it, and receive the elect into his company. For they have been those he has nurtured since the beginning of this civilization. Those who literally and physically rise up to join him away from the surface of the earth will be part of the rapture. And they, at that time, will become full-fledged members of that kingdom. If they have not completed their total effort as individuals in overcoming this world and all of their individual attachments to it, by the time he comes in this seventh closeness, they will not receive that ingredient from the kingdom of God. If they have given their full effort towards total overcoming from the time their minds receive this clarification of changeover requirements until the seventh closeness, they will receive that final ingredient and become whole in the twinkling of the eye, in quotes, and be capable of moving and serving in the literal heavens as much as the butterfly is capable of moving in its world as compared to its limited capabilities when it was a caterpillar. Boy, I botched that part up. Well, that was a big sentence, of course. But, wow, it's saying there's so much to be said about all this to show collaborating evidence, but I'm going to finish reading it. None of this, if you desire to be a full recipient of what this information has to offer, can be taken as a concept for study, religious belief, or some new idea of an avant-garde cult. The teachings that are contained here, if they speak to you, and if you choose to accept them, must be applied to the activities in your life to the extent that very soon in your individual life you will have only one thing in mind, reaching our Father's kingdom during the short time it is available to you and seeking his help in the total overcoming of this world, having been weaned from all your humanness so that you might be one of those prepared to meet him. So that's some pretty intense medicine for all of us. See, Tiendo always required a lot of us. When I talk, I dilute things to make it, more palatable. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm in that position myself because I'm a dropout who I didn't go against Tiendo, so my soul isn't. I don't think it's going to be recycled, but this was Tiendo's initial presentation of who they are to the world. The first document they wrote that became published. And they talked as if, well, there's a lot to be said about it, but I'm going to go to the chat room. I'm not going to read the summary of the entire message right now because I'm getting kind of hoarse. The horse is getting hoarse. Slickback 2002 says all dead. Eventually, that's the fate of all our vehicles and all the life forms on Earth. That's the way Earth was designed. And okay, well, you know what I'll do? I'm going to go back to. I'm not going to talk much longer here, but I'm going to go back to another document. Oh, there it is. I started to talk about with the Mark Twain story instead of trying to talk about all the things that Tiendo were teaching at that point. I think I read the beginning of it. Oh, I read the whole thing, but I didn't draw the connections with Mark Twain and with the Aurora UFO crash in Aurora, Texas, in 1897. Because if you make a timeline based on 50-year jubilees, which I'm not getting this from Tiando's direct teachings. Excuse me. But a jubilee is every 50 years. And so I had been, well, I can go through all the history with this, but in the beginning of the 1800s, there was a UFO flap. In the United States and Europe, I believe, had some too. I don't know much about the European ones, though. And then 1847, in the mid-1800s, there was another UFO flap. And then right before 1897, there was a UFO flap that were cigar-shaped objects described as, and that they were called airships. And they did start to develop airships then. Okay, so some people said that they were airships, but then they saw other ones that moved very quickly and were clearly not airships. Anyway, and they were sighted, I think, in Washington, D.C. maybe, and a number of different places all over the United States. And some people wondered if they were the same airship or they were different ones. Anyway, and so then in 1897, there was a crash of a spacecraft in Aurora, Texas. And aurora means it's related to the sun, the light of the sun, right? And the morning sun. It actually means a dawn, like the Dawn spacecraft for the dwarf planet Ceres and the lights that are on dwarf planet Ceres. That I also started to talk about here, which relates to the goddess of the harvest, which is also the goddess of death, because in the harvest everything is harvested and taken away from the garden. And that's what gets to continue to live in some way, even as a seed or as a actual functioning member of the next level in the case that I'm talking about. And that's the fruit of the garden. And then the chaff is what the wheat, the remainder from the wheat kernels, it was illustrated that way in the past in the record books. That would be burned in the fire, and so we got the heating of the planet now. And part of that heat comes from the humans, but that form of heat is the mental condition of the humans, the passions, the release of their heat through anger. Anger is a form of sensuality, and sexuality is another form of it. And hatred and power, justifying collateral damage of other humans, which humans are doing now. Even humans on the street that are hearing about certain things happening and being told that civilians were going to be killed in this operation to get rid of this drug dealer. And they would say, well, that's just the price that society has to pay for getting rid of the drug dealer. So now the authorities have carte blanche to go after anybody that they want to make into a drug dealer, even if they're just talking about, not wanting to pay taxes to the government, because they're not getting anything for those taxes. I'm just giving you some examples from that. You probably know even better examples from many of the people, like in South America, that were invaded by the U.S.-backed Contras in Nicaragua and in Honduras and in Haiti and and in El Salvador. And Cuba and Venezuela to date is the biggest one that's flaming up, with the United States trying to topple all those countries. Those are the weeds of the planet, the people that are doing those kind of things and supporting that behavior. are weeds in this planet, and that's why they said in that document that I just read that the evil were going to participate in the recycling. With the Revelation 6:8, which is I've talked about before, is according to a lot of research that I did, I believe is Donald Trump. But it might not be just Trump. It's not just Trump. I mean, it's the whole Trump administration, but it's not that. It's just everything that's happening during that time period. He's just a spokesman for the country, for that side of the country that believe in him, or even if they don't believe in him enough to where they can still do what they want with their agenda. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, they don't abide by any president unless that president is doing what they believe is right to do. Politicians are temporary. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are lifers. They know the history books. The UFO crashes and all that. A lot of them know that information, but they're sworn to secrecy. And they believe it's for the benefit of the country to do that. And they believe that they are enlightened beings in some ways. They think that, I'm sure, that have to make the tough decisions because evil does exist. So they get used. Anybody that's got influence over a lot of people gets used by the Luciferian, space alien, fallen angel souls. Through the invisible world, they do it, and they also do it by creating the facsimiles of what the next level demonstrated when they were here and they crashed certain spacecrafts in order to sacrifice the existing physical bodies they had while they were working on spacecrafts in the next level. That also brought a whole bunch of souls that did not have physical bodies but were being stored by the next level for future opportunity, brought them back. And so the Luciferians they staged crashes, and they also started collaborating with humans, and potentially even gave them traded them in order to not be, so that humans wouldn't interfere with them, try to shoot them down and stuff. And they wanted to continue, according to the Holloman Air Force Base report, they wanted to continue to be able to abduct humans without human military interfering with that, because they want a hybridization program. They can grow new vehicles that can become new members to their crew as their vehicles die off, and then they just take over one vehicle after the next. That's all they're doing now. And they can run more than one vehicle at a time. They can run. It's like a cowboy on a herd of cattle. It just takes a few cowboys to run a whole herd of humans. And they're doing that pretty much everything in the mainstream is a bunch of, well, I'm not saying that news events aren't reported as what they happened, as far as they know, in different circumstances. But when they start getting into the talking heads, talking about statistics of here and there and the way the data goes, look at even with the Hurricane Dorian. It was traveling along at a clip at 85 miles per hour, and then when it got to the Bahamas, it stopped. Now it stopped at the Bahamas, and then of course humans know that a lot of times they lose power when they go over a landmass because they're not drawing as much of that heated water energy that fuels them. Okay, but so what did they do? What did the hurricane decide to do? It decided to, it didn't stop completely. It's still going very slow. So it's, over the Bahamas. And so they thought it was going to hit right into Florida, on the east coast of Florida, down there by Miami at first, and by the trajectory it had. And now they're saying it looks like it's going to turn north. And yet it's kind of going pretty slow now, so I don't know how much they can really track how fast, where it's curving, but it may be curving in that direction. But the reason why they talk in terms of knowing all this about it, I mean, it's great that they have the technology to be able to track them pretty well. But in order to predict which way they're going, what they use is computer models from all the other paths that other ones took, and the behavior they took, what they could log of that, what they could put in their data entry. And that's the way that global warming is being talked about as the truth, too. It's because of the massaging of data. That's the whole basis for it, because there's no experiential data. They haven't, been able to have a double-blind study of this, of course, and to where they could, try to narrow down what might be causing it. Of course, they're avoiding saying that the sun has anything to do with it, except a few people. And they don't get much press, especially in the mainstream, because the mainstream is pretty much run by the party bosses, both of them, because when you get high enough up the rungs on the ladder in the human kingdom, the less and less they are subscribing to any one party or any one belief system. And they're dealing with believing that they have the overview, and even keeping secrets, of course, is part of that, in order to keep things tame. They don't want to stimulate a revolt, like to where everybody's against the government. And so they've been coming out with it very slow. I know I'm going way off what I was talking about, but it's. I mean, you can go look up the Aurora crash. Wendell Stevens wrote a lot about it in the book Alien Agenda, but it's also available. And they tried to exhume the body, and they weren't allowed. And they had a gravestone for the missing. The one individual that was reported to have died that didn't look human to the locals, and it made it into the Dallas Morning News. And so it was a pretty big deal in its time in 1897 in Aurora, Texas. Jesus said that he would be the bright and morning star. But does that mean that I think that was Jesus? No, I don't think so. Because Tiendo said that they came in the 20s and 30s. Well, 20s, actually. And so Do came before his vehicle was actually born. He was actually in this environment. And T was in this environment at the same time or before Do's vehicle was born, or Do's vehicle came into this environment. I don't know how that happened. They didn't talk about that part that much detail. But so 1897 to 1947 is 50 years. So that's so that's Aurora crash to Roswell crash. And so then another 50 years, and you got 1997, and you have, instead of a crash, you have the liftoff of the Hale-Bopp comet was the signal of, which goes to the Jesus prophecy, which I'm going to go and read. What the heck is this? Looks like I had some kind of a memory glitch. All right. I'm going to search for lightning. I've done this before, but since I'm tying it all together, into the New Testament only. I've got to search. Matthew 24:27. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even into the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Okay, so in other words, it's going to be this word lightning comes from the word aster. It's actually the word astrape, which is rooted in word 797, which is aster, which is the word for star. So it's like the starlight is like the gleam of a lamp. The starlight also, if you follow that back with all the roots of that word, it gets to be that it's a light that's strewn across the heavens from east to the west along the ecliptic, would be the further interpretation of this. And so what matches that the most? Comet Hale-Bopp certainly does. Other comets too, but that comet was the biggest and the brightest and that they've ever seen. I think. I might be wrong about that. And it changed, and it had and NASA scientists got together every year after that came perihelion to compare their data, because they had a lot of things that was different about it, and we might not even know about some of those things. What they determined, though, that it had a dual nucleus. That's right, it was two objects. And that the dual nucleus were going around one another. In other words, they had like they weren't like, they had a common center they were rotating around. The two, that represents the two, doesn't it? Oh, did I not actually put this up there? Oh, sorry about that. And notice it says Son of Man is coming. Now, Son of Man means actually, man actually, in this case, I think comes from anthropos. So that's human. It's anthropos. The son of human. In other words, he was going to be born into a human vehicle. And a lot of Christians don't think that's the case. Well, like they thought 2,000 years ago, they thought he would come through royalty channels or through the high priests or something like that. Because of Moses' stature, as pretty much like the king of the tribes, the 12 tribes. So you can see where they got it from, but it said that the two witnesses were coming dressed in sackcloth. And sackcloth was the burlap sacks that the rice and the beans and whatever else came, the grains came in, or transported in on their ships and stuff. So, I guess when they were done selling them, then the people that were poor generally took those things. So it's a common poor person, so to speak, that they were going to be coming. They're going to be dressed like that in human garb, because the people did make that into burlap sacks into clothing. I guess I said that, but I don't know if it was totally clear. But which takes us over to Revelation 11. Revelation 11:3. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. And these individuals will be, the next verse describes them a little bit. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. And that is the word apokataino, I think, for killed. That's right. Separated from their vehicle. And that can be spirit separated from their vehicle, or by their own hand. I mean, I'm not saying, well, yeah, it could happen anyway like that. They could be so plagued with something they did in the world, because they could be hurting them by hurting other people, other humans. In a sense, they could be hurting them, because they really can't hurt them. See, that's what's not. But they can be angry with them. They can. The word hurt actually goes to adikeo, which actually I should bring up the other software for that so that you all can see that too. I guess it's not too late to do that. I might talk for another 20 minutes here. Oh no, I don't mean that one. Whoops, wrong one. This one here. And then I need to stick this up there and hide that. I'm going to actually show that and then go down to Revelation 11. What am I doing? I'm getting confused. There I go. What the hell? What's going on here? The software's not like working. Oh, I'm in the Old Testament? What am I doing that for? There we go. I didn't even know you can get to Revelation from the Old Testament. This is what I was doing before, thinking I needed to have that, because I didn't realize I had the Old Testament. They look exactly the same, except what they say. I went through the motions of it and then realized that I couldn't go through those motions. I was confused, and I saw that it was the Old Testament version. Okay, so now I can hide that again, although it can be bigger than that. Okay, so Revelation 11. I'm going to go back down to these are the two olive trees. And the two candlesticks. Huh. Interesting. And standing before the God of the earth. Okay, now that's a little bit of a clue there that describes them. Along with two witnesses, that there's two. Of course, all three of those things say there's two coming, right? And they represent the candlesticks. Well, that comes from the Jewish menorah. Each one of those menorahs was a candlestick, even though they had 7 candles on it. I think it was 7, wasn't it? Or more than that? Was it 12? No, I don't know. Maybe 13 for the tribes counting Leviticus. Maybe I don't know. I don't remember now. Whatever number it was, it can it's all good. In other words, the ones providing the wax, is then the mind from the next level, and being burned means that we're consuming it to generate light. And for each of us can become a candlestick that can be so filled with next level mind that that whatever we say, not whatever we say, but what we say is I gotta take that in case it's an emergency of some sort. Hello? Do you have to ask me now? Because I'm still doing a live stream. Okay. MAIELLO. All right, bye. That's the brand name. Wasn't really an important question. Anyway, let's see. So each of us can potentially become a candlestick. That's passing on the mind from the next level. And the way we do that now is by telling other people about what Tiendo taught and said, to whatever degree that we want to take that task. That's the task that's offered to us now, to become employed by the next level. And of course, changing our behaviors and ways is, we can go the distance. We can go as far as we want to go with that. But it doesn't mean necessarily cutting our hair short and looking like Doe in the class looked. Looks aren't. I'm not saying there'd be something wrong with doing that. No, there wouldn't be anything wrong with doing that. Power to you if you do that. But we can get distracted. That becomes a religion when we duplicate those things, but we don't duplicate, because that's what people see then. And but then you could say, Sawyer, you have long hair, so you're showing them what they're not, the way they didn't groom their vehicles. So you're right. You're right. In a sense, I'm diluting it in that regard. I guess from as pure as it can be. But I do have the evidence that Doe at one point shaved his head, and another point he grew a beard. And Jimoti asked him in a meeting whether it would be appropriate for him to also shave his head. And he said that he didn't. He said we didn't need to look exactly like he looked any more than he needed to have the same hairdo as T had. But so it still remained Jimoti's choice, but it didn't make it into a procedure. And if it wasn't made into a procedure, then it's optional. We didn't have the option to grow our hair long. They weren't going to go that far with it. I wouldn't have done it anyway because I didn't have any interest in having my hair long. And I'm talking about long hair. Maybe I have my hair long because Paul said that it wasn't right for a man to have their hair long, a male to have their hair long. And I know how far off the track Paul was. That's not the reason. I don't really care to talk about it, but because it's insignificant. I mean, there could be positive reasons for it, and there could be negative reasons for it, okay? That's the way everything is in the human kingdom. But the information, even if I'm doing something wrong in that regard, because those are human things that can be forgiven us. And like I did a number of things that Tiendo had recommended against, but I don't feel like they were necessarily wrong for me. But at the same time, there might have been other ways that the next level would have handled circumstances to help me have the time to write my book. I was living off a credit. I ended up paying for that credit with inheritance that my vehicle got. So it worked for the better, but otherwise, Tiendo were not in favor of living beyond our means. That's what they didn't like about the credit system, is that it kind of enslaves us to the system. I mean, these days you can't even. I don't think you can rent a house unless you can prove that you have a good credit history. In a lot of places, I mean, not the rural places, probably not so much, but the cities, where there's a lot of competition for properties. They're looking for the people that have a good record. If they can't pay their credit card bills, then how are they going to pay the mortgage? I can understand the thinking of it, but it's not really fair. It's just for profit that they're doing that. Because having the good credit history being encouraged to build yourself up with your credit history, I mean, it's part of the human kingdom. So I don't. And Tiendo said that everything in the human kingdom is opportunity. But some things we're going to get more lessons from than other things. That's, I think, what it really comes down to. I don't know if credit is one of the biggest. That's not one of the biggest sins that a sin being something that Tiendo didn't teach to do. Tiendo did teach that there were major offenses and there were minor offenses. Or they didn't say minor, actually, because minor kind of makes it sound like it's not that important, right? To me, it does. But lesser offenses sounds like it's just not major, but they're lesser, so they're still potentially big offenses. And that most of those have to do with relationship to one another, not being deceitful is a big one. And of course, restraining from sensuality and sexuality is another one. And those are the requirements for being in the classroom. To get on T's crew, we have to fulfill those requirements. But the reason I talk about that's not the requirement for people now is because Luciferian influences and all the humans that are dead humans and even humans in physical bodies will say that, well, then if you can't do that, if you don't have the willpower to eliminate your sexuality, then might as well just pack it in. You can't become a crew member on the next level. And yet there's probably a lot of things that we're not able to do. But the process is working against those things and then coming back to them and increasing our work on those things so that they're less and less a part of our life. That would be weaning ourselves from the addiction. And a good way to wean ourselves from an addiction is to go cold turkey. But to do that is very hard sometimes to do within the environment that we have. Nowadays with the internet environment and, I mean, you can, because a lot of things can easily trigger those forces within us. But the next level will help us. So anybody that wants to try to take a stab at that, if they ask the next level for help, and then they go with that help and they try to remove themselves from being subject to circumstances that, it's like the alcoholic. I was talking to a former alcoholic the other day, and he goes out in the town once in a while to just walk around the town, but he doesn't like to do it too much because he was an alcoholic and he's tempted to, want to go into the bar and get a little drink. And so he doesn't want to do that. So he keeps a tight lid on it. And so, for different addictions can be different. And sexuality can be an addiction also. And it is for many humans, even though it's been normalized as even a healthy pleasure or even a spiritual pleasure. That's how it's been turned into something that's, you can find a way of saying that, yes, it can help your vehicle be a more healthy human in certain ways. But a member of the next level doesn't need to be a healthy human in those ways. And they can achieve enough of the health they need from maintaining a cleansing kind of diet to where they're not ingesting too many things that can slow it down and even potentially stimulate lower vibrations of sensuality. Like people have mood swings or they get headaches when they get off the coffee or they have mood swings if they don't get certain foods to eat that are pleasurable for them, and a certain amount of food and a certain amount of proteins or a certain amount of meats or a certain amount of eggs or it seems to be all those things that are most flesh-based that are the hardest things to kick. Butter, but you can substitute it with olive oil. And you can learn to really be happy on a lot better things for the physical body. The Transfiguration Diet is the book that Doe wrote, and Doe and the crew wrote in 1986 and 7, and published. And were maybe I guess it was published in 92. But the first beginnings of it were our own exploration of that. That Doe said that he didn't need to go through that. So that's why he started that project after he left. He did stimulate our fasting on what were called pink drinks that were protein drinks with like lecithin in it and wheat germ and added to it and some other things like that were supplemental to that we lived on for maybe a month before it was changed into something else, and they added bread product, yeast rolls, and because I got vertigo during that time period, or it attacked me anyway. And then when they added the yeast rolls, I was okay. Well, let's see. I was in the 2 olive trees. Since I brought up the 2 olive trees and 2 candlesticks. I feel like I need to go over to. I'm going to go to the other software though. To Zechariah, and search on Jesus refers to Zechariah, and Tiendo said that everything that Jesus says in the Gospels were his words, not the whole story, were kept accurate by the next level, which was a crew that did that, and they had to work very hard to do that, to keep it accurate in its current, in the form that it still is, even though there's been distortions to it and mistranslations in it and things like that. There's enough of the truth in there in those translations that we can believe that they're true. And so, since he was talking about Zechariah, was also depicted there in the relationship to John the Baptist, potentially maybe being the return of Zechariah, who might have been the return of Aaron, or might have been another student that was on a task like that had that kind of responsibility with it. So Zechariah, we go to chapter 4, and he talks about that there's okay, so I'm going to start reading from Zechariah 4:1. And the angel that talked with me came again and waked me, as a man that is wakened out of his sleep. An angel would be the same word as messenger. And said unto me, see, instead of coming up with a kind of an original word, they should have, well, I don't know actually what that word meant. It was malak, messenger, representative, ambassador, deputy, meaning to dispatch, root meaning to dispatch. As a deputy. So it's a task for a next level member. Okay, so Zechariah 4:2. And he said to me, what seest thou? He says that to excuse the Old English. It's not the best version in the world. I like the Amplified. I like that better. And Doe did too. I mean, that's why I like it better. But for the same reason, because it provides some of the Greek equivalent meanings to the words used. So you get a more objective picture. So this Bible should have been twice the size that it is. And said, what seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick all of gold, and a bowl upon top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps, which are upon the top thereof. Well, there you go. That's the menorah. And I'm not going to try to, go through all the ways that, all the representations of all those words. I could, but I do want to, stop this at about 3 hours, because I'm getting kind of tired. But then he says, Zechariah 4:3, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other on the left side thereof. And that's also depicted in the book of Daniel, that there would be 2, and Jesus talks about Daniel. And not saying that everything they said is accurate, but I'm saying that it's a little bit of a plus indication that these things can be related. Because remember, I read that document before that said that all the prophecies in the book of Revelations were going to come to pass. And I don't take that lightly. And even though I might get some of them wrong, I got them, I think, good enough. And some of them I think I got right in the book that I wrote. That is a retranslation of and reinterpretation of the book of Revelation, most of it. Then it says in Zechariah 4:4, so I answered and spake to the angel that talked with me, saying, what are these, my Lord? In Zechariah 4:5, then the angel that talked with me answered and said unto me, knowest, I already read that one. Zechariah 4:6, then he answered and spake unto me, saying, this is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. Then he asks, Zechariah asks, I don't know who Zerubbabel is, I don't remember, I think he's a king at the time. It says, who art the great mountain? That's the Zion mountain, the mountain of the next level's spacecraft that's probably sitting on the Earth physically still, because it's in Revelation 6, the end of 6, that it seems like the heaven rolls up like a scroll. So that mountain I'm calling heaven, the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem will be replacing it, but it might be the same size. I don't know if it's the same size as the one that's 1,360 square miles. And there is a square being shown in the heavens as a sign near the sun. Like I've seen now 3 different examples of it, the square object. So the New Jerusalem might be that. See, that's giving a sign like that, and then being able to attach it to the Book of Revelation's prophecy, where it's talked about as having about that size, with 1,360 miles square. It says it's all the sides are the same, but see, that could also be a round object, right? They could all be the same distance. No, but it describes them as actually sides of it. So I think it is the square object that most fits that possibility. Anyway, so who are these? I'm going to skip over this. Yeah, he says it again in Zechariah 4:11. Then answered I and said unto him, what are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick and upon the left side thereof? And I answered again and said unto him, what be these 2 olive branches, which through the 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves? Tindo did refer to themselves as pipes. They may have done so because of this reading this, it's possible. But we didn't talk about it in the classroom. Zechariah 4:13, and he answered me and said, knowest thou not what these be? And I said, no, my Lord. Zechariah 4:14, then said he, these are the 2 anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. And anointed is the word fresh oil, shining. And that relates to Jesus saying that when you receive the mind of the next level, your whole body is full of light, and you receive it through the eye. And that means the eye being the eye of our mind, our mind's eye is receiving it. But it has a relationship with our eye because it's through our eye that we actually witness the older member in their lifestyle, in the way they live, in their behaviors and ways, and the way they talk with one another. the way, and that's why it's crucial to listen to T&O tapes that I've done. If you want to listen to any T&O tapes, you can go back in my live stream. You don't have to go too far back to find a whole bunch of them. Anointed means fresh oil. No, let's see. The two anointed, the word ones is from Ben, the Greek word Ben, I think it is. Son, children, the two children, the two sons, the two first would be Adam and Elohim, Jehovah and Moses, both old and son, both father and son, father and Jesus. Stranger, because they're from a strange land. They're from a strange world compared to the human kingdom. And people, two people. The word Ben means people. So the two people are the two anointed people. I hadn't actually seen that people before there. I like that. Because Tino shocked me a little bit when they first, actually it was after T left her vehicle. It was like 1986 or 7. I think it was 7 in Boulder, Colorado, at a house that was on Lost Angel Road. It was off of Lost Angel Road, up Boulder Canyon. And it was the first house on Lost Angel Road, I believe. And anyway, those related to the next level as people. And I remember thinking, wow, that sounds strange. Just sounds strange to me. Because I still had some spirituality in my head. Even though I wasn't like a big student of spirituality. I mean, I did dabble in things. I did believe that spirits existed. Ghosts. I thought they were real. I actually was exposed to that not long before I met T&O. Somebody picked me up. I was hitchhiking, and told me that spirits were real, and that he had a picture of his buddies that he was in the army with or something, and the only ones that were dead were the ones that were faded in the picture. Wouldn't that be interesting if that spirit was actually standing in front of them while they were looking at that picture? And then he was seeing that individual with his image of that individual, of who that individual was in the world, that vehicle. And that's what caused the fading of that face. Because the other ones that individuals hadn't gone into the spirit world. So they weren't physically in some kind of frequency format vibrating in that spot, that same spot. So anointed also is a term for Christ. If you look up the word Christ, one of the definitions would be anointed ones. And that means they were given the task. They were given the task to come to Earth and do this task. Actually, T assigned herself and Do to the task. Her the younger member that she birthed into the next level before this, on a different planet, I think it was. Or certainly before this, this current civilization. I think they thought it was from a different planet. Anyway, so I want to share that. Now, many Christians will say that the two witnesses are Moses and Elijah, or Enoch and Moses, or Enoch and Elijah. And it's interesting, after I just read that the same individual was all those people, makes them correct. That is the return of them. And they get that because they were met by them on the Transfiguration Mountain. And that's not a bad reason for coming up with that. But they don't recognize that Jesus was one of them. On the return, not during the Transfiguration Mountain, because Jesus was the individual operating the Jesus vehicle, and he wouldn't have been operating more than one vehicle, even though that's a potential that he could do that if he brought enough mind with him to do it. Or he could do it from a spacecraft. If it was T, Doe said that T had her mind had grown so big or dense or experienced that she could have more than one vehicle, is the way he said it. So, in other words, T could be doing a task on a spacecraft at the same time as T is doing a task on the planet that required to have some of her mind with her to do it. Because it's not like you can do it all remotely. If they could do it all remotely, then they wouldn't have come incarnate, they told us. Because they don't like it here. Once they awoken, they didn't like it here anymore. Because of course, you're giving up all the things that humans thrive on, right? And if you don't want to build yourself into a power monger as a spiritual leader or the like, then what else is there to do to get to the height of what we can become? Which they knew that there was more to go, so they gravitated towards spirituality, okay, because that's the study of the potential future, things that are happening outside of our norms, outside of the physicality, but that are demonstrated in different ways to be real. Like when we have dreams, we're demonstrating that within our noggin or right outside of it, we can have images that seem like it's real life. We can astral travel if we want to practice doing that, which T and Do didn't recommend doing, because they wanted us to control our horses, our human vehicles. And so be there all the time, because when we're gone, then the influences can come in and use our vehicle. Unless the spirit had grown in that vehicle, had grown to cast that vehicle out. In a sense, when we were told when we went to sleep at night, to program our vehicle so that we could go do a different task, the souls could, that the programming would be left behind so that the spirit would be putting it into effect and would wake up. For instance, if an influence tried to come around it to stimulate sensuality. Well, I've made videos that go through these verses one by one, even though I always see more when I go through them again. I don't always say all the things that I could say about them, even leading up to them. I'm not picking and choosing really, except just for the sake of the topic that we're talking about, and that's what I was saying about the 144,000 related to the Jehovah's Witnesses question, if that person is still participating in this. I guess I didn't switch screens before. The Revelation 11, I started to talk about them. Sorry about that. I'll do it now. Oh no, not with that one. With this one. Oh well. That's not going to work out. All right, I'm going to go to the chat room for you're giving me brain damage, Sawyer. I'm not going to take that as a personal insult. I understand that this can be confusing. This can be mind blowing. It can be uh, uh, um, stimulating. It can put you to sleep, I imagine, if you're not interested. But then you go to sleep. Don't listen to me. but, so I'm going to put it to a close because I'm going to have brain damage if I don't bring it to a close. I'll start demonstrating brain damage. So if there's nothing else on your minds, I'm going to terminate this live stream. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, everybody.